I tell you what, I think Steve Borthwick's England team, for the first match of the Six Nations against Italy this weekend, when he names that at the end of this week, there's going to be so many interesting areas in it. In particular, the back row and the midfield. But it's fascinating now. You'd have seen Marcus Smith has been ruled out injured. There were reports and rumours overnight. It's been confirmed a short while ago. He is no longer available for selection. So fly half conversations come into that discussion as well. I can't wait for the Six Nations. Welcome back to the channel. Really appreciate you clicking on the video. For those of you that have been here before, for those of you that are new, welcome. My name's Alfie. If you can subscribe to the channel, then I'd massively appreciate that. And also like the video and drop a comment down below as well. But Marcus Smith out injured. I'm going to discuss the fly halves in a bit of detail. And then I'm going to go through my team, my England starting 15 for Italy at the weekend, which I'll be honest, I'm not 100% convinced on by any stretch. As I say, that back row, the midfield, I think it's pretty tough to pick combinations at the moment. But sitting here right now, I've jotted a team down so you can let me know what you think of it. But starting off at fly half, England are blessed in a way for a team that can have Owen Farrell step away from international duty for the time being, can have Marcus Smith go down injured, and you've still got George Ford and Finn Smith as your options at fly half. That is as stacked an area in the England team as I think they have at the moment, but it does still raise quite a lot of question marks. Because what do you do now? And there's so many different plates spinning here. On the one hand, you've got Italy as your first game up. Now, Italy are not to be underestimated. They have a young, exciting team. Their under-20s have been improving over the last few years. Benetton have had a good start to the season in terms of one of their club sides doing much better than we've often seen in previous seasons. Italy are no mugs, in particular with a new coach coming in and what he might bring, the fresh ideas he'll bring to the equation. But Italy traditionally is the game that you might give guys debuts or you might test combinations. But at the same time, and on the flip side of that, this is a Six Nations. England have to start well. They haven't started Six Nations well recently. It's something they need to do to get themselves off on the right foot and build momentum. And Jamie George, the new captain, has said they want to go to Italy and make a statement. So what does Steve Borthwick do at fly half? Do you rely on the 90 capper George Ford, who got England through some pretty tough moments in the early stages of the World Cup, proven quality, been there and done it? Do you give him the keys to the attack and say, run this, get us off on the right foot? There are a lot of reasons that makes sense. Or do you roll the dice a little bit and do you give it to Finn Smith, the young Northampton player playing brilliant rugby in the Premiership, and not only playing brilliant rugby, but he looks ready for this and he looks ready for international rugby. And I was leaning to this before the Marcus Smith news anyway, and actually I'm doubling down. I think Finn Smith needs to start for England against Italy. On the one hand, as I mentioned, it is Italy, and I don't think it's disrespectful to say they are one of the weaker teams in the Six Nations, so I think it's a good game for him to come in at. But more than anything else, he looks ready. That game Northampton played against Munster, away, a player down in the Champions Cup in the driving rain, the way in which Finn Smith marshalled that Northampton team, played in the right areas of the pitch, his decision-making, I think he looks ready for international rugby. And then you factor in as well, George Ford has been injured. George Ford hasn't played much rugby recently. He's been making his way back into the fold. Rather than chucking George Ford in when you don't know how ready he is, give it to Finn Smith, who we know is ready fitness-wise. He looks ready in terms of playing-wise and where his game is at the moment. Give him the opportunity to be part of an England team that goes out and makes a statement. That's where I am with this Marcus Smith news. It is a blow. It's a blow for Marcus Smith and where he fits in. I would go down the route of selecting Finn Smith. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Give it to Finn Smith, or would you be maybe a little bit more cautious, but give it to the experienced head of George Ford? You can let me know in the comments. I said I'd get to my England 15. Well, here it is. And I also said that I wasn't entirely convinced with it, but I'll talk you through it. Number 1, Ellis Genge, loose head. We have a lot more options actually for England. Loose head, they've got quite a few different decent options. Joe Marler, who did well at the World Cup. Beno Obano, who I think has looked good for Bath. I would go with Genge. Jamie George is obviously there as the captain. You'd then have Theo Dan on the bench. Tight head is tougher. Dan Cole, Joe Hayes. I've gone Will Stewart because I think he started the season well with Bath. I do think tight head is an area of concern for England, but I think Dan Cole does have a role to play in this Six Nations, as much as that's going to frustrate some England fans in that they think England need to move on. I think there will be other teams that he will play against, maybe start against. I think Will Stewart, I would give it the starting berth to for the game against Italy. In the second row, Itoje and Chessum. They look like they're going to become the next England second row pair on a regular basis, don't they? I was tempted, and this brings me on to the back row, to put one of them, possibly Itoje, at 6, because I think the back row is where, I don't know where Steve Borthwick is going to go or what options he is going to go for. And in part, it's because of the loss of Courtney Lawes. Everyone speaks about Owen Farrell. I think the loss of Courtney Lawes in the back row is the bigger challenge for England to get over this Six Nations, because of the line-out option he is. I think they're going to want someone at 6 that is a line-out option, which is why I've gone for Tom Pearson, because Pearson can be that, and he can also be the big ball carrier. He can do a lot of work around the park. And then does Ben Earl keep his space at 8? If Earl's at 8 and at 7, I've gone for Sam Underhill. You could go Curry. That's when maybe you do need a Pearson or even an Itoje or someone like that at 6. If you're looking at the size of your back row, there are all so many different things to factor in here. Underhill and Pearson for me were question marks, because I am not entirely sure what way round you go for. Ethan Root's obviously a good option. I think if they are going for someone who's more of a line-out option, he might fall down a bit there. Same with Chandler Cunningham South, although actually he could be that guy, and I think over time we'll see him more and more playing 6 for England. And I went with Sam Underhill because, to be fair, Sam Underhill has had his injuries recently as well, so that could be a criticism you put at me and say, hang on a minute, if you said you're not selecting George Ford, you don't need to rush him back. Why are you doing the same with Underhill? I just like Underhill. I think he was brilliant in the bronze medal match at the World Cup. I think when he is on form, he brings something to that back row that no other back row brings in England. His tackling's exceptional. He'll get over the ball as well. So, yeah, I could be swayed on my back row, but that's what I'm going for the time being. Ben Earl keeping his spot. He was awesome at the World Cup. I think he deserves it. Into the back line. So, Alex Mitchell at 9. That was his jersey at the World Cup. Nothing in terms of his form or performances for Northampton have convinced me otherwise that it shouldn't be him. Ben Spencer has been excellent. I would probably have Ben Spencer on the bench, but I'll go Mitchell, as I've said already. Finn Smith, his Northampton teammate, at 10. And this is where we get into another huge conundrum for Borthwick and co. The midfield. Ollie Lawrence's injury makes this such a challenge for England, because I think Lawrence would have played 12, even though he plays most of his rugby for Bath at 13. He would have played 12 and been the bigger body, the ball carrier. And then you'd have had options at 13, whether it be Henry Slade, whether it be Tommy Freeman. Ollie Lawrence's absence, given the fact that Farrell isn't there to play 12 and Manu Tuolangi is injured, I don't know what they'll do. I've gone Dingwall at 12 because he's basically the only player, or he's the only player in the original squad that has been playing 12. I know Max Ajomo has come in, and I wouldn't be worried at all, actually, if Ajomo did get the 12 shirt. It'd be a bit like Mitchell at the World Cup, not being in the original squad and becoming the starting scrum half. But I don't think Borthwick will go that way. So I've gone Dingwall at 12 because he has at least played there. Henry Slade at 13 because it's a relatively youthful backline I've selected, and therefore I want Slade because of his experience. Plus, his performances for Exeter this year have been excellent. I think he looks like more of a leader to me, actually. In that young Exeter team, I think Henry Slade has grown into a leadership capacity because we've seen so much experience leave that squad. So Dingwall 12, Slade 13. What that does is mean you have a much slighter midfield than England would necessarily want. I don't think they have too much other options. Ajomo is the one, as I mentioned. That means I'm going Roebuck and Freeman on my wings because I want bigger wings who can come off their wings. You can use them in different ways in your attack to give you some bigger bodies through the midfield if you need it. Will Muir is another guy that you could call on to do that job. Again, someone that wasn't in the original squad. I'll be more than happy if he did feature. But I've gone for Roebuck and I've gone for Freeman and I've put Freddie Stewart at fullback. So as I say, I could probably quite easily be spoken around in a few different categories, in particular my back row. But what do you make of it? I think the one thing for me when I looked at this team and I tried to put a 1 to 15 on paper was in particular that midfield, what that does to the rest of your team. And I found myself thinking, well, I need bigger wingers in this case because I'm going to need somebody to be able to carry. Freeman has been playing 13. I'd play him on the wing, but he's been excellent for Northampton. He's a great, really strong character. carrier rather. He's fast. The back row, yeah, I think England will have an exciting lineup, potentially, but there are big question marks. And what do you make of my shout at fly half? Time for Finn Smith, give him the opportunity. This isn't just because he's the form player, by the way. I should emphasise this. In fact, I'm not someone, for example, that thinks Henry Arundel should be in the England team, even though I know he can't at the moment because he's not eligible. Even if he was, I don't think he's ready. I've never necessarily thought that Adam Radwan is quite ready yet. I'm not in that camp that always just looks at players in the Premiership and say they need to be playing for England. I think Finn Smith should be playing for England because his form dictates it and he is displaying a type of rugby that I think is transferable and a maturity that is transferable to the requirements and the pressure of the international game, in particular of Six Nations. So let me know what you think of it. Six Nations is here. Cannot wait for Friday night and the weekend. I'll be doing as many videos as I can in the build up to it, so appreciate you watching. If you want to like the video, it just gives it an extra bump, helps the algorithm, all that sort of stuff. I appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel. Comment down below, what would your England 1 to 15 be for the Italy game? Would you have Finn Smith at fly half? And I'll see you in the next one.